All right, this meeting is officially being recorded.
Call to order the June 5, 2024 meeting of the Clark County Clean Air.
All right, our chair, Ted Gaethke. Our vice chair, Glenn DeWilly.
Here.
Tracy Chervallo. Do you have your mic on?
Close enough, I'm here.
How do I say your last name again? Remind me.
Chiravalo.
Chervallo. Here. Alejandra Cortez, absent. Oh, no, you're listed twice. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Sandra Martin.
Here.
Bohm. Kate Perkins. Here. Rudy Salacory.
Here.
And Phil Stroud.
Here.
There's a little button on the side, and when it's green, it should be on. It's you can just clip it to yourself. Okay. Here. All right, fantastic.
Roll call is completed. The next order of business is the approval of the meeting summary, otherwise known as the minutes for our April meeting, April 3rd, 2024 meeting. Does anyone have any additions or changes or comments with regard to the meeting summary?
I think I just want to confirm if you received those or not from Alice, and she's been out a full week now, and so I don't know if those were actually transmitted. So
I do not believe they were.
if they weren't transmitted, is it possible to follow up with those as a put it on our next agenda to approve those meeting minutes along with the meeting?
I think we have no choice, so we'll move that item along to the August meeting. Next item of business is public comments. I believe we have in-person comments this evening. And I don't know if there's anyone that's been online or if we received any requests for comments otherwise.
I am not aware of any comments that we have received online. Did you email today to request public comment?
We're just here to see how the meeting goes.
Okay. Well, I would
Sure.
welcome you to introduce yourself,
Yeah.
and if you have any comments, you're welcome to share them.
I'm Leah Perkle. Lived here all my life, born and raised here. So Vancouver Lake is a big, important issue for me, along with Black Goose Lake. All our natural resources, I think we should be cleaning those up and maybe put better regulations on them so that they don't get polluted as much, and we continue, once we get them cleaned up, not being allowed to be polluted by whatever bodies or whoever is causing the issues. I don't want to make any accusations because I don't know what's causing it until we do further investigation. So
Thank you for joining.
And I'm Steve Perkle, and I wasn't born here. I actually was born over in Portland. I've only been here for 35 years, so fairly new to the area.
Quite some time.
So, and I have the same concerns as Leah, and especially Vancouver Lake. I can remember when we had
our son was
younger. We could go there, we could swim in the lake, and
clean.
it was recreational, and not that anymore.
Hasn't been for a long time.
Well, thank you both for being here today. And just confirming before we move on, everyone online, were you able so far to hear everybody okay? Okay, fantastic. Thank you again. Welcome.
If there are no other public comments, we'll move to Clean Water Division updates, starting with the manager's report.
Okay, fantastic. Our last meeting went really long, so my goal tonight is to be quick. So wish me luck and hold me accountable. For our division managers update today, I have prepared an overview and update on where we're currently at in our 2024 rate study. Before I get into that overview, I just want to confirm how many of you had a chance to review any of the work session materials. Totally okay if you didn't. Okay, so a couple of you had it. Anyone online? Did you have a chance? It's okay if you didn't. I can cover some of it today. Okay, fantastic. So I'll be providing you with an update on where we are in our rate study, and I will also be sharing an update on our lakes work, specifically focusing on Vancouver Lake, since we have our technical advisory group kicking off next week. And then I also want to share some updates on where we are at in our request for proposals that have been active, and we are at a point where we're selecting some consultants for additional work. And then I also want to wrap up with just a quick preview of our new permit requirements that we're anticipating will become effective on July 1st. Around the corner. Moving right into it. So for those of you who have been following along, the Clean Water Division is currently in the process of developing a rate, or we're in the middle of a rate study. Currently, for your background information, Clark County has the lowest stormwater rates in Western Washington. We are 100% funded by ratepayers in the county. Each parcel pays a fee on their property tax assessment that funds all of our clean water work. And we are well underfunded compared to other jurisdictions. Currently, we charge $47 per parcel in the county, and our nearest rate is the city of La Center, which charges $122. So we are almost a third of the rate of a neighboring jurisdiction that has no requirements. So this was the first thing that I was tasked with when I came on as a new division manager, and we kicked off the rate study in January. We have had a work session with council in April and in May, which is our primary way to update them on where we're at in the study. And then, so most recently, we had a work session on April 24th and then May 22nd, I believe. And so what I'm going to present to you now is a little bit of an update of what we shared with them on the 22nd. So you may recall that one housekeeping thing. Do you mind Xing out on that recording and transcription box from you can use the mouse or if someone wants to help him, and there you go. That way we can free up the screen. Oop, just the little box, not that one. Ooh, sorry. Sorry. The one that's on the in the middle of the screen.
It's got a radio button and it's a rectangular box right in the top of the title slide.
A little bit lower to the right. That X just below your pointer. Thank you. Okay. So the Clean Water Division currently is responsible for over 50,000 individual assets. We had presented some original replacement values that we had calculated for 2018. And we estimated that as of 2018, we had approximately $219 million worth of infrastructure that we're responsible for stewarding. I wanted to share with you all that we have updated those numbers. Our team has been working hard on that over the last few months. And we have to report on this every year to the Government Accounting Board. And we estimate that our current infrastructure replacement value is $321 million. So over the last 6 years, the value of our assets has increased by almost 47%. And we updated council on this number to continue to demonstrate what our liability is and how important it is that we proactively maintain and repair these assets before they break. Because at the end of the day, if everything broke all at once, it would cost us $321 million to fix. Slide. Not working. Apologies, guys. So here's a summary of our in 2018, again, it was $219 million. The greatest the greatest valued asset that we had are those underground pipes, as we've talked about, at $135 million, which is around 60% of our total portfolio. Today, we estimate that our gravity mains or our pipes are actually worth approximately $182 million, and we have 440 miles of pipe. And for those of you, again, who have been tracking the pipe asset management program development, none of these 444 miles of pipes have ever been inspected or cleaned. And so part of our rate study proposal is to develop an asset management program to inspect and clean those pipes for the first time in county history. I wanted to remind you that the Clean Water Division has 6 programs in total that we implement to achieve compliance with our stormwater permit. This includes a capital facilities program, which is really focused on construction of new stormwater projects. We have a facilities maintenance and operations program, which is focused on maintaining all of our existing infrastructure. We have a monitoring and assessment program focused on collecting all the data on water quality. Stormwater planning and coordination is our program that's really focused on everything regulatory, including private facility inspections and pollution source control. Then we have an education and outreach program. And then finally, we have a clean water administration program, and lake management is in that bucket right now because currently we do not have a lake management program. We are in the infancy of a program. And so until we get council approval to have that program, it would technically be a 7th program. So currently all of our cost estimates for lake management, we have bundled into administration. So that's where you'll see those costs represented. So within the rate study, we've been looking at our 6 programs to identify where we service gaps. And currently we estimate that we have 65 service gaps in our programs where we are currently not providing activities that we have identified as either being mandated, we have to provide them, or recommended where they are proactive investments that are important to extend infrastructure life, or those additional watershed health investments such as planting trees, restoring natural areas that aren't necessarily required by law, but that we think is important to implement in order to improve watershed health. So of the 65 service gaps, the program where we have the biggest gaps, and you probably aren't surprised, is our facilities maintenance and operations program, followed by our capital facilities program. So,
How many of those would you say are compliance gaps, and how many of them are more functional?
we will get there. Yeah. So that is a good point. So this is the total gaps. Within these gaps, some are mandated. We have to do them to follow the law. Some are best practice. We should be doing them because it will help prevent infrastructure failure. And then some of them are like the bonus. I called them the cherry on top, but they are more of the nature-based restoration, watershed health activities that the Clean Water Commission has been interested in and our programs interested in implementing. So of these 65 gaps, we have determined that between 2025 and 2029, our program has a current funding gap of $15.2 million. So this is our expenses that we have. This is our shortfall essentially, where we are not currently collecting enough revenue. Of that $50.2 million deficit that we have forecasted, we estimate that approximately 74% are infrastructure funding gaps, with $21.5 million of our shortfall being related to maintenance and operations over the next 5 years, and just over $16 million related to new construction of capital facilities. So $50.2 million. If you average that out over 5 years, we have a funding shortfall of approximately $10 million a year that we're trying to increase our rate to be able to generate that revenue. I'll just say that council was not very excited about how high that number is, but it is a tough reality. And part of that is because we have some testing to do before we can just be at the baseline status quo compliance level that we want to be at.
You say the council was not happy with that number. Were they questioning its accuracy, or were they just surprised by the amount of it?
I think they were surprised. Well, so mixed reactions. Some were surprised, but some also weren't surprised. Some acknowledged that we have been historically underinvesting in clean water, and that part of this is because there hasn't been the level of investment needed, and there hasn't been a rate increase since 2015. So I think there's some responsibility there. Like we have some work to do to help get the program up to speed. I think there were some that wanted us to really take a hard look at what we're recommending and see if we could phase things or if we had higher priorities, which is where we're currently at. I would say though that this is the first time that someone has taken this close of a look at the gaps. So I think there's some shock as well on the level, the depth that we've went into really looking at where we are, what we're doing well, and where we are truly having risks and liabilities. And so I would like to now go into how we have broken down these gaps by the mandated and then what's recommended versus additional, which are 3 buckets that we're categorizing so that ultimately we'll be asking council, I ask council for it all. I'm like, I think we should be doing it all. At a bare minimum, we need to be doing what's mandated. And that would be my last effort request. Essentially, my recommendation is that council funds the mandated activities, and then they can pick and choose between the recommended and additional based on what they're interested in. If we were really lucky, I think we would pursue just the mandated and recommended activities. But at this time, I still think we have quite a bit of a battle and some persuading to do to even get the full package of mandated.
Devin, quick question. Is there any merit in looking at the word additional? Because it almost feels like, okay, that's the last thing, like you call the cherry on top. And considering another name for the bucket, such as sustainment functions, where you start attacking resilience, adaptive climate, change type things that may draw a little less ire maybe in terms of, oh yeah, we just want to keep piling more on. So thought.
That is a good thought. I am open to ideas of how to reference these items. The original title was optional, and we dropped optional and made it additional because we didn't want the perception to be that the optional things could just go away bye-bye, because we think they're still important. They're still important. So the additional reference was actually a last minute change, but I also think it's important to continue to refine our talking points and how we describe these 3 different buckets, which I will do. And I think once we get in, I'm not going to go into detail what is in each of these buckets because there's 65 line items. We'd be here till tomorrow morning. But at the end of these slides, which I have sent out and will also be posted on the website and also in the work session, is the full list of all of the activities for each category if you want to go in and take a deep look at what we're proposing in each bucket. But I will attempt to summarize a little bit of that now. So just to remind you how we're defining these different categories, the mandated services are those base level services that we have to do to be in compliance with state and federal law. This is what our program has historically functioned to do, be in compliance with the stormwater permit. The recommended services are those things that are proactive, like pipe asset management. Technically, we are not required to clean pipes. But we would put that pipe asset management in the recommended because maintaining and inspecting pipes is important to prevent failure, to prevent risk to public safety and other infrastructure, and to help extend the life of not just pipes, but also roads, bridges, culverts, and anything that's downstream of a pipe and private property. And then also doing proactive activities helps reduce any future non-compliance that could come from us just deciding to not maintain things. And then all of a sudden we're in trouble. So we consider this bucket the things that we highly recommend council does, but technically isn't required by law. And then finally, the additional services. This is the highest level of service. These are the leading practices. These are really those watershed health things that help us move the needle on climate, salmon recovery, above and beyond just managing stormwater. So if we take those 65 gaps that we've identified and look at where those gaps are, we have identified approximately 30 of the 65 gaps are mandated gaps. 23 we would put in that recommended category where we think these are important to reduce risk and failure. And then the additional, we've identified 12 gaps. Of these buckets, our greatest fund deficit out of the 50.2 million are those mandated services. We estimate that we need approximately $23.6 million between 2025 and 2029 just to do what's required. If we wanted to do those recommended services, we need an additional 20.8, or if you put it together, just over $44 million. And those additional services, although important, are our smallest deficit at $5.8 million. So again, the highest priority for us is to get a yes from council for those mandated services. And we really hope they'll consider the recommended as well, or at least some of them in the next 5 years. I just wanted to point out that we are giving them some different scenarios. So the orange line, you see the deficit annually for all services. So by 2029, we need an additional $14.1 million a year to provide for all services, versus if we dropped off the additional, we're still looking at needing up to $11.9 million a year for just the mandated and recommended, versus if they only did the mandated and they stayed down here in the blue line, we still need between $3.5 million and $5.6 million each year. I just wanted to mention this isn't like an incremental change. This is we need $3.5 million in 2025. We need $4 million in 26 additional. 2027 peaks because we have significant new sweeping requirements that get implemented, and vice versa. So the cumulative, you would get the total 5 year deficit. Tracy, I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Devin. My question is that public survey that you did. I was just curious, which bucket, did most of those items fall into that people wanted? And was that included? Since I'm so sorry, I haven't listened to your presentation yet to the council.
Yeah, no. So what we heard is people are really interested in nature-based solutions. They're interested in wetland restoration. They're interested in floodplain restoration. And those activities we would consider additional. They're above and beyond what's required. They're not necessarily achieving our permit compliance because they're not necessarily managing stormwater.
Right. So was that included in your presentation to the county councilors?
We presented the survey results on April 24th, and we also broke down the results by district. And so those results, the information I'm summarizing right now is from our May 22nd presentation. So if we went back a month, all those survey results were summarized, and they, again, received it by their district so that they could see what their constituents cared most about. And I'd be happy to send you those links. There's also PDFs of just the raw survey results too, if you don't want to listen to me out for an hour to council.
No, I love the survey results. I think that you showed those to us before. I was just wondering if you, when you were talking to the council about this, if you talked about the additional services are the ones that your constituents want.
That's a really good point, and I think that's something we should be rolling into our June, because our next work session is June 26th, and we haven't publicly shared any rate estimates yet. We've only shared our deficit. Council has seen the rate estimates in one-on-ones privately, because we recognized that we aren't ready to unveil them to ratepayers at this time because they're not final. We're still modeling, and the fund targets aren't final. But we figured showing them that we need $50 million doesn't really mean a whole lot unless they can see what that means for their ratepayers. And so we're preparing to present those publicly on June 26th. And I think you are spot on, Tracy, that making sure we're connecting each line item to the survey respondents is essential. Because, for example, and there were some really interesting ones around lake management too. Like, people are really interested in long-term nature-based solutions for the lakes, and people are interested in addressing proactive or making investments to avoid infrastructure failure, which is consistent with our pipe asset management program recommendation. People really want to see trees planted, and we don't have any county tree planting programs. And so, and we're proposing to do an urban forestry management plan. So thank you for that comment about continuing to like draw the thread between these action items and the survey results. That is a good reminder. So I'm almost done with the rate study stuff, believe it or not. So our request to council was to consider supporting clean water to address the mandated, recommended, and additional. Consider it all, please. I'm the dreamer at the county, I think. Priority 2, if they couldn't support the additional services, we requested that they minimally consider supporting the mandate. So that is what we, and at the end of the day, they may support the mandated activities. They may not. So it isn't clear to me at this time if we're going to get a yes on a rate increase this year, but we are still fighting for it. Going to the survey results, we asked the public, what is your opinion on Clark County's ability to protect clean water? And 84% of the respondents said we need to improve. So we keep reminding them that the public really wants to see us protect clean water.
So when you say that they cannot approve the mandated service gaps, what are the repercussions for that in terms of like us violating the Clean Water Act, or like not meeting the requirements of our permit?
It's a great question, and my leadership has reminded me that being in compliance with the law is a policy decision from council. Council has reminded me that. Council has the ability to say, no, we're not going to comply. Like, we're currently not in compliance with the Growth Management Act, and we are appealing it. They could choose to not be compliant. The repercussion is that we can get enforcement from the state or the federal government. They could fine us, and we can also be sued by third parties, which we have been sued in the past. The last time we were sued was in 2015, and we paid for that lawsuit by increasing the rate. So my recommendation is that we increase the rate to be in compliance to provide services rather than passing the cost of non-compliance on ratepayers. In 2015, there was a $5 surcharge put on the clean water fee for all parcels, and that is how the county paid for the lawsuit.
Does the, does the council understand the history of third-party litigation under the Clean Water Act against the county?
They do and they don't. So one of the talking points for the next work session too is reminding them of how we paid for non-compliance in the past and making it very clear, like the ratepayers pay for compliance or non-compliance at the end of the day. And I am working as hard as I can to, my value is to be in compliance, because I think it's important for maintaining our relationships as well with funders and with our regulators and with ecology and EPA. If we're looking for long-term support from them, we have to do our part. And so I am doing everything in my power to convey the message to them. I don't want to run a program that's not compliant. So we still, I think I would like to wrap up and then I'll talk to you guys a little bit about where we're at and what I think I need from the commission and what I'm asking for also from, or what's happening right now with ecology. Okay. So next work session is June 26th. We are going to present draft rates for ratepayers for what it would cost to ratepayers to only do the mandated services, what it would cost to do the mandated and recommended, and what it would cost for the mandated, recommended, and additional, so that they can see 3 different rate scenarios. They also there may be the potential that they pick and choose, like they like pipe asset management, they like lake management, but the rest they don't care about. Then we can pull those off and develop different rate scenarios. So we'll be having that conversation. We're also looking at our rate structure. So single family properties currently pay 38% of our total revenue. Right now, single family properties, there's a reduction if you have a bigger lot. So the bigger your lot is, the smaller your fee. And there's a reduction for rural property. So if you're within the UGA, you pay more than those outside. So we're looking at potentially making changes to those as a way to change our revenue. So we're looking at if we remove the reduction for lot size or we remove the reduction for rural areas, how would that impact our revenues in the event we don't get the rate increase we want? We're also looking at, for businesses and roads, we charge on a square footage basis. So those parcels are billed for every 3,500 square feet of parcel, or sorry, of imperviousness. Vancouver charges for every 2,500 square feet. Camas is a little bit lower. Richfield is consistent with us, but we have the option to adjust our base unit for how we calculate those commercial properties and roads. Roads is our second largest funder. So we get most of our second largest funder to the Clean Water Program is the County Roads Program. So it does have an impact on the county. The county would be paying more for clean water, which, like transportation, is normally the largest source of imperviousness and stormwater runoff, and 6 ppdq. So these are other things we're looking at simultaneously, and we'll be bringing to council for consideration as well, because those are policy decisions. So in addition to those milestones, or the next work session, which I would invite you to attend, you can attend in person, you can write a letter, you can attend online. We tentatively have public information sessions held for July. I am questioning if that's a little early because we don't know if we're going to get a rate increase at this point, and I would hesitate to start talking about rate increases to the public until we have more certainty. But we also have our council and commission bus tour on the 30th. So I'm really excited to spend the whole day with council showing them what we do. And then we're currently trying to figure out if we need more time with council in July or August, but we're targeting the final rate adoption hearing on August 27th. That's already scheduled. And that the new fees, if adopted, would be calculated in October. We operationalize all of our changes through our budget adopt. So we're simultaneously putting in all these budget change requests that are hypothetical, may not happen. Council still would need to approve those budget activities, regardless, like they could increase the rate and then send to giving us the resources in the budget in December. So we still have a long way to go. And then if we're successful, the new fees would go out in February. Rudy, I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah, do you anticipate that there'll be enough time between now and the bus tour to develop talking points, elevators, beaches, that sort of thing? You spoke earlier about working on messaging. I think that'd be a really great opportunity for us to, make the case.
That's a great idea. I would be happy to help equip you commissioners to have some talking points. And, I think there's also value in just the relationship building too. And I had an ice cream cone with Counselor Young the other day and like just talked to him about his kids, and that goes a long way in getting to where we need to be. But yes, Rudy, I'd be happy to get like a 1-page talking point to each of you so that when you go into that bus tour, you have some things in your back pocket to talk about.
Has there been any internal discussion from like a public engagement strategy? If the rate study isn't really ready to roll in July to the public, would there be value in a listening session from the public to prime the pump? And has there been any thoughts about that?
And that's a great point. That is an option for the public information sessions. We could pivot, and rather than talking about new rates, we could talk about gap, deficit, non-compliant, and then provide to help get more public energy around this topic.
Mm-hmm.
Rate increases are divisive,
Okay.
because at the end of the day, it impacts families. And but that is a good thought as well to pivot on those. We want to hold 3 in different parts of the county so that we're reaching everyone ideally. And we haven't. That's why we're still holding on to those dates, because some of this is like we have to adapt on the fly depending on what we're hearing. And it wasn't until the last work session, and I spent an hour with each counselor one-on-one, and that's when I really learned a lot. And I was like, we still have quite a bit of work to do.
Fair enough. So Devin, do you think the 26th then is when you'll know it's going to go forward?
I don't think anybody's going to say in public if it's going to go forward or not. We aren't asking for an approval until. So what I have heard from council is start looking for other. I was told take a scalpel to it. That doesn't mean I'm not taking things off the table. We are looking at how we can reallocate some of our capital funding and access different funding. We have the ability, our program has the ability to pay for all of our capital projects through real estate excise tax dollars that we have never accessed. And so we're looking at right now, how can we access that pot of funding that already exists at the county, so then we can take our capital program dollars and roll them in maintenance so we would get our capital needs paid for and some of our maintenance needs, which will lower our deficit and have an impact on rates. So we're trying to get really creative and different scenarios, plan A, plan B, plan C. We're also having some great success right now talking with funders, and there is potential that we could push some things out a little bit. So we're just getting creative, but we are not. I'm still not ready to take too much off the table. So if you ask my team, I don't really believe in taking things off the table until they're fully on the table. I think things are starting to get on the table. And we're hearing, you might want to take. I'm not ready for dessert yet, so we're still shuffling things around. But we will hear in June how they react to those rates. And we've been asked to pick a single family residential property and a commercial property that is well-known and demonstrate our rate proposals and how that impacts that ratepayer so that they can see what that means for the bill that they'll receive. And so I think, unfortunately, this is going to impact our business community the most. And I think it will be challenging. I think when they see those impacts on the commercial properties, I think we'll really know based on their comments and feedback and reactions where we need to go.
In the spirit of like priming the pump, like I said, are you releasing any sort of like concise and accessible informational document, you know, to say, I don't know how much of this information, for example, the deficit or the need for infrastructure inspection and management, you know, for pipes, like there was that sinkhole that opened up, right? Like it's a great example of why we need this pipe work. But is there any plan to like communicate that information to the broader public? You know, yeah, with something like that.
I would say, since the survey, which really was asking the public what they care about, we haven't released any other additional messaging. I think what we're trying to avoid is getting people too fired up about the potential rate increases and having it go sideways. So, but I think what you're proposing there about starting to develop some fact sheets or social media posts about where we have gaps without continuing to cause compliance risk, because the tricky part of this too is we're making ourselves very vulnerable here. And if so, I love that thought, and I'm going to give it some more thought and take that back and talk with our public information officer about how we can start to roll this out in little infographics to give people bite-sized chunks, especially ahead of those listening sessions.
Well, given Rudy's comments about the importance of the July 30th event, does it make sense to change the timing on this? Because that event could be somewhat pivotal, particularly on a commission bus tour where they're seeing and hearing, you know, all this information about the infrastructure that could change minds. It could cause people to shift opinions, and it's a way to move everything down a little bit further along so that that can act as perhaps a critical moment in decision making on the council's part.
Yeah, we were hoping to catch them. It's hard with vacation schedules. I know you're absent that day as well, which is really unfortunate. We do think it's a really important chance for them to see what the work looks like in the field. Like, for example, they've never been out for a maintenance yard. So we're going to get them in some street sweepers, get them into Vector trucks. We're going to take them and collect some samples. It's going to be a full day. And that will be pre-seeing the rate increase recommendations before the hearing. And we're hoping to get one more touch point with them. And I would say you all have scheduled touch point with them for the rate on August 21st. So we strategically put the Clean Water Commission's annual report and work plan presentation a week before the rate hearing. So you'll be our final saving grade. We're lucky.
Closers.
You're the closers, right?
And one other question.
Oops, what did I just do?
Assuming that, assuming the rate increases are not as you have thought them out to be, they're modest and not perhaps acceptable in the long term. Can you go back? There's going to be a new council starting 2025.
Correct.
Can you go back the following year and readdress these issues?
Yes, and I can also, we could do it incrementally, even if we only got a mandated or a slight one, we could go back and revisit it. And that is something that my leadership and I are already talking about. And unfortunately, you know, you think it's a lame duck year for two, you know, and I was really optimistic, like, is this going to be their legacy vote? Well, their legacy vote could also be, I didn't increase rates, I didn't increase taxes, I kept things low. And so I think right now where we're at is we'll probably get a yes from Counselor Marshall. I honestly think we're gonna get a yes from Counselor Young for at least mandated. I think Counselor Bowerman's a no matter what. And Counselor Medvedi and Counselor Belcott are very uncertain. I have no idea what they'll do. I would hope Chair Medvedi would vote in favor of an increase, given a lot of the advocacy he's had for the lakes. But I think it's still really uncertain to see. So if we can get Counselor Marshall, Counselor Young, and Chair Medvedi, I think we'll be very lucky. But again, we still have a lot of work to do. But we're not giving up hope, because if it fails this year, I hate the word fail. It's not going to fail, because it's still been a success, because now we know what we need. And we did this all without a consultant. But yes, we could come in January and start over. I'll be very tired, but we start over. Any questions online? Otherwise, I may propose that. I think that's all I had on the rate study. I think for June 26th, it would be nice to have either, we have two options. Another letter of support, or some sort of public testimony from the Clean Water Commission, public comments, one or the other. We have some time later today to talk. We have the rate study work group. We have time on the agenda. We can talk about that now, or we can wait. And when we get to that part of the agenda, I would love to hear from you all if you have ideas on how you could support us moving into this next phase where we're going to be presenting rates. And a letter might look like, we've told you what services are important to us. We highly recommend that you support a rate that will pay for all of these services, or at a bare minimum, please consider the rate necessary for the mandated and recommended. Or your letter could just go straight to the punch and say, we highly oppose not supporting the mandated minimally. So that will still be a huge increase to our program. We're talking multiple staff. It will be a huge improvement, and it will help pay for a lot of the facilities and maintenance needs that we have. So we can come, I would say, I would look to you three to really, we can have that discussion now, or I might suggest that we
Roll it.
keep moving
I'd
and go
advocate
into
for
it.
rolling it.
Yeah. I think these next sections can be kind of quick. Are there any questions or comments online? Do you all want to come to the June 26th meeting? I'm just kidding. Okay, hearing no comments, I would like to give a quick list update. I realized in preparing these slides, I didn't include a lot on Lacamas, but I do want to share, we now have a signed interlocal agreement with the city of Camas to work on Lacamas, which is fantastic. We had a kickoff meeting with Steve Wall and Brian Bonin, who is their municipal stormwater permit person and does all their monitoring. And we're in the process now of developing a joint work plan, as well as we've been working very closely. I know Glenn, you've been involved with the monitoring plan development, and they are gearing up for doing a treatment this summer, but they're trying to figure out something about the diatoms and trying to figure out, it's so
There's a
complicated.
narrow window
A narrow window of when they can treat.
of time, yeah.
All the phosphorus is in the diatoms, the little
Right
algae.
now, that's right. They've uptaken the surface, mostly available, bioavailable.
So it's when the plants start to die, that's when they need to treat, right?
Yep.
Not a very good.
One switch turns off, quick dump it before the other switch turns on, because the lake is very stratified, and we're reading DO levels at 0.0. right now. So we know the internal loading mechanism, which is about 20% of the lake's load, is poised to give up a lot of phosphorus. And that's what they really want to try and attack. So it's a little bit of science, a little bit of art.
It is. It's like timing too. And that's what I'm finding out. The tricky part of this lake stuff is like, you can't just go treat it at any time. You have to be like ready to go when the diatoms are. So that's where we are right now on Lacamas, but I would say we also are anticipating 2 new grants starting in October for Lacamas. So we're preparing to begin negotiating those with ecology. One's for lawn care outreach and doing some work with HOAs on lawn care practices, as well as developing translated materials for Latin lawn care workers so that we can be providing education on weed and feed to Spanish speaking populations. We are also preparing to continue our septic and agricultural work that we've been doing with the Conservation District through a new grant that will begin this fall. So lots of good stuff happening on Lacamas, but for today, I really wanted to focus in on Vancouver Lake because we have our first technical advisory group meeting next Wednesday, which is wild, but exciting. So for those of you who've been involved with Vancouver Lake, you know that the lake has been had water quality issues for a long time. Thanks to Friends of Vancouver Lake and our Southwest Washington delegation, the county received funding to develop the Vancouver Lake Management Plan, which I've been referring to as our phase 1. We received $150,000 through a legislative proviso, and the county hired Herrera that developed this lake management plan, which looked at recommendations, short-term and long-term recommendations to improve water quality in Vancouver Lake. And so this was published in August when I started. Low-hanging fruit, first month on the job, got the plan online. I had nothing to do with it. But since then, we found out from Ted, actually. Ted knew before we knew and before Ecology knew that we got a $330,000 new legislative proviso for phase 2 to implement the lake management plan. So very exciting. And this is a $330,000 proviso that we have been scoping with Ecology and also have been interacting with Friends of Vancouver Lake and the port as well as public health to develop the scope of work. And one of the values that I've had as a new leader is to really focus on implementation and to also focus on nature-based solutions, long-term solutions, while also coming up with some short-term necessary things to help address recreational closures. And I've also been thinking a lot about permitting feasibility and fundability of long-term solutions. And so within our scope of work, we are developing a public participation plan, which is essentially re-engaging the technical advisory group, which is a group of people from multiple organizations that have been involved and provided input on the planning process. In addition to engaging the technical advisory group, which will, I believe there are 5 or 6 meetings scheduled, touch points throughout the process for the technical advisory group to weigh in. Additionally, we are hiring a consultant to look at different frameworks for special districts to figure out what are our options for generating long-term revenue for lake management. Does it have to be council approved or voter approved? What are the potential rates? Do we want a special district or do we want to roll the cost into our stormwater rates? How do we make long-term decisions? Is there a new jurisdiction needed? And so we'll be at the end of this process, we will have recommendations for how to generate or create a long-term funding and governance structure for the lake. Additionally, we are focused on implementing a beach algaecide treatment plan or a beach management plan. And this is focused on, this is a short-term solution to address recreational closures that impact rowing events. This is not a long-term solution, but part of the reason we went with this solution is because the long-term treatment options, the effectiveness is unknown due to the sediment dynamics in the lake. If you were to do just like a full lake treatment without knowing how the wind resuspends the sediment, we don't know if it would be effective. It's also really costly. This though will help. The goal is to reduce swim beach closures and to come up with a protocol for treatment and monitoring that will help prevent issues like we had last year where rowing events got canceled the day before because there were harmful algal blooms. We also have a task focused on flushing enhancements. So those of you who've been following Vancouver Lake, you know it has some flushing issues. It's shallow, it's wide, it's hot, and there's a flushing channel. We'll be looking at the hydraulics or hydrologic modeling. I never know.
Hydrologic modeling.
Hydrologic modeling of the lake to determine how much water's coming in, how much water's going out, really focused on developing some early conceptual design alternatives to restore flushing to the flushing channel. And then we also have a task focused on watershed implementation to reduce nutrient loading to the lake. Oops. So I went over a little bit about the beach management plan. This first phase, we're really looking at planning and looking at what our options are. We do not have a preferred approach selected yet. We'll be hearing the options that we have for the first time from Herrera at the tag meeting with all of you. So just wanted to put that out there. Herrera asked us today, are you comfortable hearing these for the first time with the public? I was like, why not? Like, I don't know what the right answer is yet. Like, we might as well all talk about it together. But we're also looking at the permitting required for a beach management plan, as well as like what it takes to actually mobilize this, and the monitoring needed to really understand the effectiveness of the treatment that is being proposed for the beach. Again, the flushing channel enhancement is really looking at different alternatives. I believe they're going to start with 5, and the goal is to narrow it down to 2 to conduct more robust modeling to land on some conceptual designs and cost estimates that we can begin to move through preliminary design and hopefully use to help compete for funding. Because the long-term solution will require a lot of funding to implement. Our timeline is we have to implement all of this by June of next year. We have to spend all the money. So we had a competitive RFP out that closed in February. The consultant was selected. Friends of Vancouver Lake, the county, Clean Water, and Public Health, and the port were all on the selection team. And the final contract was just approved, and Herrera is under contract and working right now on, and the focus right now is on, I'll skip ahead. Sorry, this is like kind of a messy slide. The first phase is really focused on the beach. We want to do a beach treatment this year. So the June 12th meeting is going to be focused on the beach management plan. Future meetings, we're not going to start talking about flushing enhancements until like September. And at the meeting, we'll be talking about guidance for tag participation, some background on phase 1, the scope of phase 2, and we're gonna have a facilitated discussion around our options for the beach and get input. I'll be providing well, I'm gonna listen, but you know, it'll really be my first time where I get to think about what our options are. We have over 25 people who've RSVP'd from Friends of Vancouver Lake, the Rowing Club, the Port, Ridgefield, Vancouver, County, DFW, Ecology, Watershed Alliance, EPA's tentative. So we're really excited about the turnout. I'm wondering if we can get somebody there from Army Corps, nice, or any political representation. But again, our next meeting after this, so from this June meeting, we'll take the input to develop by Sandra, to develop a final beach treatment plan, again, to hopefully do that treatment this summer. And then in September, we will be providing the tag with updates on how that went, as well as kicking off the flushing enhancement discussion, with the goal to, between September and May, to land at some preferred alternative for the flushing channel. Any questions on lake stuff? I know that was really quick, but I know we didn't get to it at our last meeting, so I wanted to make sure we covered it today. It's the year of Vancouver Lake. I keep saying that. But like Earth Day, make every day Earth Day. You make every day Vancouver Lake Day. Go ahead.
I have 2 questions about the technical advisory group. First, I got the event and I forgot to RSVP, so I was wondering if it's too late to have wonderful.
Just come.
And then the second question was, anybody on the invite list who has like done research in Vancouver Lake, like at WSC Vancouver?
They're on the list. Sorry,
Okay,
I should have
yeah.
listed them. We had the main researcher was included, and I think they're on the tag the first time.
Her name is Gretchen
Gretchen.
Bowles.
Yeah,
Who's extremely
that was my
invested in the
undergraduate.
lake, so.
Yeah, that was my undergraduate research.
Oh, was it?
advisor.
Yeah. She's been doing studies and work on the lake for like 20 years, I think.
Yeah, I published with her in Lacamas Lake, but I haven't seen her in a number of years, so it's great to see her again.
Oh, it would be awesome to hear about your research sometime.
Yeah.
So it is going to be fast. I think it's going to be, I hope it's fun and exciting. My goal is to make progress and to come out of it with a management plan that the county is able to continue to implement at the beach. And that will require, the challenging part is we're Clean Water Public Health manages the beach. And it's owned by parks. So it's going to require some internal coordination and influence. And then I'm happy, though, we were going to have it at the sailing club. Respectfully, I think it's better to have it at the port because it could be hot and we're expecting a lot of people. And it's also a hybrid meeting. And I think having the port involved and hosting is strategically a good thing. They have to come. We know you'll come.
Maybe when there's a nice day, we could have the sailing club available too, just so people are right on the lake.
I think that would be really, I would love that. Or even like an after event, like after the meeting, like a, we don't do enough of that in government, you know?
Hey, Devin, can we jump to the symposium since it's related to this, and we'll just move that off the agenda then?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So I met with Alice last week, talk about the symposium. It's going to be October 17th at the Water Resources Center, the city's Water Resources Center. They're giving us the special governmental rate, which is actually pretty reasonable. There are some limitations on setup and when we have to break down the tables and chairs and things. So we're looking at probably a 9 a.m. start and maybe a 3 o'clock finish with a lunch break in between. We expect about 100 people, primarily from enforcement agencies, but also from the public too. We want to have a mixture of people who have an interest in the lake, but also the regulatory community heavily involved because we're going to be looking to them to help implement the plan once it's adopted and finished. So it should be a great event. I understand we don't have any issues about county providing the lunch facilities this time around, as we did last time.
I got the email in writing. They're paying for lunch.
So for those of you who weren't involved with the Lacamas Lake Symposium, we had a big kerfuffle over who was gonna pay for lunch.
It was
right?
really dramatic.
Well, that's,
A
that's,
month-long debate. It's only June and it's already confirmed. Amazing.
we're welcome to worry about that. So
Yeah.
we're beyond that issue. And now it's just a matter of the invite list, whether, should we have a keynote speaker? Maybe not, maybe just a series of subject matter experts who are there, and a lot of Q&A opportunities throughout. We haven't quite honed that down yet. We got the invite list, but that's the next step. And if you all have ideas of who could participate or should participate, we would welcome them, because we'd like to know who's out there that other board members know that could be valuable participants or speakers even. So
And we did survey who wants to be on what work group, and I saw that there was at least one other person who says they want to be on the symposium planning. I don't know who it was though. Did any of you indicate there was
I didn't take the poll, but I would be on the symposium planning group.
great.
Yeah, sadly.
Good.
cool?
And I'm not very pregnant this time, so it should be a little easier.
Tracy or Rudy, were either of you one of the people who identified yourself as being a Vancouver Lake Symposium planner? Okay, if you weren't. Okay, just checking. I did want to go back to one important point and just check how many of you are going to be at the tag meeting, because if there's a quorum, I think I have to make it a public meeting. I have to do some additional things to make it a special meeting of the commission. So how many of you?
Either virtually or in person, does it make it?
I think if more than 4 of you are there, we could technically make it a special meeting.
But that's not a difficult thing to do.
No, I just logistically want to make sure I'm following the rules.
I plan to be there.
You're going to be there.
I will be.
You'll be there. We have at least 2. Anyone online planning to be at the tag meeting?
I've got it. I'm in
Glenn
there.
will be there.
Yep.
I'm still on the fence, so I'm a strong maybe.
Strong maybe. So we have 3 right now. That's perfect. Let me know if 2 more of you plan to be there, just so I can plan accordingly as far as what I'm required to do. And if it's 3 of you, that's fantastic too. Okay, I'm gonna go back to just quick, and I wanna, so we have had some RFPs out recently, requests for proposals, which is exciting because we've had so much going on in the Clean Water Division. You all know Jeff Schnabel. He's worked here for 27 years or something along those lines. And he told me Clean Water hasn't had like a new RFP out in years. So the fact that we have multiple and we're able to procure new work has been really exciting, but we're also just learning a lot on procurement. So I did want to let you know just really quick, we have a couple other projects. I'm not going to go into these in depth, but they are things that will be happening over the next couple of years. Vancouver Lake Management Plan implementation, that contract has been signed. Herrera has been hired. We're good to go. One that is in process right now that we're currently negotiating is our stormwater code and manual update. This is very important. Our stormwater code and manual is the keeper of all of the development regulations in the county. So this says how things can be built and where and when and what inspections required, what infiltration testing is required, what modeling is required. And it's super technical. And I'm very excited that our leadership supported. Originally, this has been done in-house for years. And I didn't feel like I had the expertise. I'm not an engineer to do this update, nor we don't have any, we have one engineer on our stormwater team or in the stormwater clean water division. So we are very lucky we have selected OTAC to do the stormwater code manual update. They will be leading us through, we're required to, Ecology has required changes that we need to make to our code manual. And then we have the ability to make significant discretionary changes, which are things that we've identified that we want to update. We're also going to be engaging with DEEB, our Development Engineering and Advisory Board, throughout the process, and this has to be adopted by the Planning Commission before the council. So it's going to be a very heavy process as far as working with commissions. But I'm really excited about this because I think this is a huge opportunity to change how things are built on our landscape. One of the things we'll be looking at are infiltration testing requirements. Currently, we want to make them more stringent so that it's harder for the development community to deem low impact development infeasible. Currently, the testing requirements, the developer can say, I can't build fire retention or low impact development. So then they put in less green infrastructure. I don't know what the right word is. More gray infrastructure, more ponds, less infiltration being.
Dead water faster.
Yeah, more detention focused, bigger ponds. And so that's one thing we're looking at. We're also looking at changing our groundwater mounding thresholds. We have some failing infrastructure in the county that was built, and unfortunately there's groundwater mounding, which is causing flooding. It doesn't drain, and the water's backing up into pipes, and we believe that there needs to be we need to take a look at our thresholds and triggers for when we require groundwater mounding analysis. So we'll be doing some very technical work over the next 2 years. We have to have, we will know, within the next year, we need to submit our plan for changes to ecology, and then we have a year to incorporate them and get them adopted by the Planning Commission. So this whole thing has to be done by June of 2026, and then it will need to be implemented. And since it will, within it too, we have included development of training programs so that we can not only use it internally to train our engineering staff and our inspectors on stormwater, but also to help educate our development community on what's required. The big one, I'm excited about it. It's going to be very contentious, I think, because what we're proposing makes it more costly to build, essentially, and more difficult to build. So I think this is going to be another tough one.
For the stormwater code, I know you mentioned you had one engineer on staff, but what about the engineers over at land development? Are they included as a part of the interview process to provide some feedback on here's how developers are driving through LID and stuff?
That's a great question. So we have one stormwater engineer, but we have public works engineers and we have engineers in development review. They're just in different departments. So that's a good clarification. So
Sure.
we're the keeper of these regulations. We're not necessarily the users. The
Right.
users are the people who build roads and the people who approve development plans.
Yep.
And so we just had we lost our head development engineering reviewer. We just had a new person come in, which is great. The old person was great as well. But we have some new leadership, and we'll be working with them simultaneously on checklists and fact sheets. And so they'll be involved in the core team as well as our engineering design section, so that we're all learning and steering this together. But you are spot on. Like, the user of this manual isn't our team. It's community development.
Sure.
And so part of our target for training is to help train up all of their development reviewing on the new requirements. Well, also training our inspectors and our O&M people on all the new requirements. So we'll be building that. Training was identified as the #1 need, especially since the county's having a hard time getting engineers. Private sector pays more. So we have a lot of junior staff who maybe came from Oregon and don't know the Western Washington Stormwater Manual, who really are asking for training. So this is a big one. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be hard. We're also one of the only, we're one of 5 in Western, I think, I don't know, Western or Eastern that has our own manual. Most people use Ecologies. We have a manual that's equivalent, so anyone can use it in Washington State. But at one point, Clark County decided to have its own manual. We don't have to. We could have the state's manual. The county has chosen to have its own.
There's a history of that.
I think it has to do with infiltration testing. So I don't think I'm going to be popular revisiting the infiltration testing requirements.
Well.
But I didn't take the job to be popular. Bioretention maintenance plan. So we have 600 failing bioretention facilities in the county right now that we know we need to address. And some of them are fully failed, some are about to fail, and some are like, if we do a little bit of work now, they won't fail. So they're in like 3 different stages. We had some challenges with procurement on this one because it's technically public work and there's a lot of different procurement laws that we've had to work through. But right now we have selected McCase-Pacito to develop a bioretention maintenance plan to essentially give us an approach for how you would address these 3 different types of facilities. And then we intend to bid out the repair. I will say what's really exciting about this is we've been working with the Department of Ecology very closely. There's this new model for project delivery in Washington State called Community-Based Public-Private Partnerships, or CBP3s, that look at alternative contracting or alternative procurement or performance-based contracts. And there's a move now to change when you pay people for the work. So instead of just paying them when the work's done, you don't really pay them until they demonstrate that it's worked for 2 years. And so they're paid based on their ability to demonstrate something works, and they're paid on their ability to maintain it and keep it performing. And it's a new national model that a lot of people are looking at. It usually also has a requirement to engage like women and minority businesses in it as well. So it has a community component. And we have been identified as our program being one of the top 2 in the state that they think is shovel ready to take on this pay for performance style model, which means that Ecology is very interested in funding this work and using us as a pilot learning lab for other municipalities in Washington State, because we're trying to deliver public work in a way that partners with the private sector and that pays the private sector differently. And it holds them more accountable to not just build stuff that doesn't work and walk away. They have to build it and demonstrate it works and get the plan established before their contract is fully paid out. So this will be really exciting. We're super excited about it. We're super excited that Ecology is interested. We have all these big consulting firms interested. It's a way for us to be a little innovative and test the waters on a new model and potentially bring in significant revenue from the state, which is good for our rate study. I think right now we want to invest $600,000 a year in bioretention maintenance is what we think we need in perpetuity. So, 5 years, I can't do math very well, $3 million approximately that we estimate we could bring in from the state, potentially more depending on scalability.
And these are just county held facilities, no HOA, private.
Only public, we do not work.
Right. Got it.
Yeah. And then finally, in November, we're planning to put out 2 additional RFPs. One is for design services support. We have interest in hiring a firm to do preliminary design on Suds Creek, which is a tributary to Salmons Creek for salmon or for restoration, nature-based restoration. And then we also have a stormwater management action plan that we need to develop. This is a permit requirement And we'll be seeking professional services support to do that plan. Tracy, I see you have your hands up.
Yeah, I was curious when you're talking about the bioretention areas, are we gonna get to see a failing bioretention area in our bus tour? Are you gonna show things that need help as well as things that are, picture worthy?
I really want to, and I'm going to push for it. I think Jeff felt a little uncomfortable with it. And I was like, Jeff, we got to drive council past them. There's like a whole row of them on the road. So I will take that request back to Jeff and let him know that Tracy wants to see a failing bioretention. Any other questions? This is all new stuff in addition to the rate study, in addition to the Vancouver Lake that will be exciting.
That's a pretty full plate.
We're so busy.
Yeah,
It's
we've never
rough.
seen all that work.
And it's really just a couple of us that do. Yeah, rough. But it's fun. We have new permit requirements coming. They'll be active June. Sorry. I think they'll be published July 1. So these are our new permit requirements for the next 5 years. So by March of 2025, our department is responsible for renegotiating all of our interdepartmental agreements for every department at the county that implements a part of the permit. But I'm really excited for this because it's a chance for us to reestablish expectations and educate. We have to submit our stormwater manual update, at least our plan for our update, by June of 25. We have new requirements around PFAS and fire districts. We have to inventory all PFAS in the county and educate fire districts on BMPs. They're also required to report and contain any discharge of the PFAS foam. This is completely new. There's no guidance out there. So this will be a new area of work that we're embarking on and need to have complete by December 26th. We're also required now to do overburdened community public involvement, and which means identifying our minority populations and providing outreach opportunities and public involvement opportunities to communities that might not be able to sit around this table like we are. By July of 2027, we have new sweeping program updates. The new sweeping program requirements require us to sweep everywhere quarterly. So we think it's going to cost us $1 million more a year. Essentially anything discharging to a salmonic bearing stream or a CMDL listed stream needs to be swept, which is essential. So we're preparing for this. We have to also develop an enhanced maintenance plan that says how we're going to sweep. So we'll be doing that by July of 27. July of 2027, we also have that stormwater management action plan. We have historically studied Mill Creek, which has an alternative flow control standard for my engineer friends in the room. I'm continuing to analyze that creek. By December of 2027, we have new requirements around PCBs and looking at illicit discharges of PCBs, as well as there's new requirements now for if we see people washing buildings at certain ages, we have to stop and make them stop and have best management practices and education and outreach in place to help them contain any potential, because PCBs are in a lot of like old caulking and building paint supplies and stuff like that. Also, we're curious what the nexus is with demolition. If we start to see more, especially with redevelopment and full development, if we start to see more homes get demolished that are older, how do we dispose of those building materials if they have potential for PCB? By March of 2028, we need to be coordinating with long range plans. So that's like coordinating with our long range transportation plan, our comprehensive plan. And then we also have a new requirement to map and establish policies and goals for urban tree canopy. And we've been selected by DNR for direct investment to map all of the tree canopy in our urban growth area, which is really exciting. I have a meeting tomorrow. We'll be doing that with partnership with the Conservation District. And also doing some targeted investment. They want to see plantings in Minnehaha, so we're hoping to like just put so many trees in Minnehaha. It's really exciting. I think that's all I have on my. I know that was so much, y'all. I am so sorry, but it's only 8. It's not
All these
9:30.
new requirements, are these coming from ecology, Clean Water Act, the feds, the states, down to the locals? So how's it, where were these new requirements coming from?
This is all required in our phase 1 municipal stormwater permit, which is passed on to us by the Department of Ecology. Department of Ecology passes through those requirements to us via the EPA. So the Clean Water Act is the driver. But the state of Washington has the ability to be more prescriptive on what they expect to see.
Where does the comp plan requirement for climate change fit into what you
Yeah.
and Clean Water are doing?
It's a great question. So some of you are probably familiar that our comprehensive plan now has a new climate element requirement where the county has to plan for climate change. And that includes mitigation. How are you going to mitigate greenhouse gases? But how are you also going to demonstrate resilience and adaptation where you to climate change? We would see that as our involvement. So we're involved as an internal stakeholder, and we've been providing input throughout the process. And that involvement we would see as consistent with that coordination with long range plans. However, my long-term vision is to continue to increase the capacity of our team to be involved even earlier. But that is our nexus with the comp plan currently, besides like facilities plan and understanding where we're going to see growth. And what you brought up before, are pipes the right size? Are they under capacity? But that lives in community development. We are engaged through their
Cool.
internal advisory group.
Great.
It's warm in here, isn't it? That's all I have for you. I know we've covered a lot of the stuff that Alice wanted to, that the only things from Alice is that we asked you all if you wanted to change our meetings to monthly. 5 of you said no and 2 said yes. So we're going to keep them every other month. We did hear if people wanted the meeting to start at a different time. 3 people said they'd be okay with 6, and 4 of you said you'd be fine with even earlier than that. I don't know who identified 6:30. But I am wondering, is there strong opposition or barriers to starting at 6 rather than 6:30? Do you have any barriers to 6:30 or 6?
No, 6 was great. I mean, I'm one of the 5 o'clock people. Just because by the time, it's pretty early, but the 6 would work just fine.
I have the earlier. I'm fine with any time. I just don't like getting out of here at 9 like we did last time. So,
Do we need a motion to change the time of our meeting?
is there anyone? Yeah, I guess.
About them.
Do you guys have any comments online about the meeting time? Is there
I
any?
moved that we go to 6.
You're making the motion?
I'm making a
Okay,
motion.
do we have a second?
A second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Opposed?
Right.
Motion passes unanimously.
done deal. Nice job, Chair.
You just can't vote, but.
Yeah, I know where that one's coming from.
We also asked people what work groups do they want to join. 5 of you said rate study, 2 said Vancouver Lake. Nobody's interested in the code revision, which I know Alice said you guys discussed a little bit about a pathway forward there. And then 3, environmental justice and watershed health. So I need to go back and take a look at the survey results. I know you indicated who you were so that we can make sure we're matchmaking those who are interested in those groups. Maybe they do a bus tour. And I think that's really it. on my updates unless there are any questions for me, and then I can really just pass it over to you for any discussion you'd like to have.
I think we need to go back and finish the discussion about what actions we want to take between now and June 26th. And whether we, as a group, issue a letter as well as appear in person to testify. And I'm assuming there's public testimony at this particular meeting.
There normally is public comment ahead of a work session.
Okay. My preference would be that we do both, but I'd like to hear from the rest of the board as to what your interests are in trying to support clean water and their efforts for the rate increases.
Also, if we wrote a letter of support, would it be from the commission or would it be each individual person, writing a letter?
I think it'd be from the commission. And our previous one came from the commission.
Yeah, this one handout is what we did before.
Yeah, this is great. This is really great. Because yeah, I mean, if there is I work on a lot of like just data-based stuff. I do some like NEPA analysis and stuff like that, and so I would be interested in writing a letter of support, really from a scientific perspective. I know that there's a lot of ways to approach it and a lot of ways to communicate information. So that would be my perspective.
And you do have the right to write your own. You don't, whether you decide to do that as I'm Commissioner Perkins or, there's no limitation. Each of you could write your own and a collective. It's up to you.
Well, in the last go around, the commission authorized Glenn and myself to essentially work on the details of the letter, which we did, and it was signed and sent out. If the commission is okay with that process again for letter writing, and again, I would, as Devin has said, invite anybody to submit individual comments as commission members as well. But if you're okay with that process, maybe we could replicate that with this letter as well. Is there any objection or concern about that?
And so to contribute to that, is it possible to have to just contribute ideas for that process? Last time, did you have one primary author and then have
Yeah,
input?
well, Devin kind of gave us the basis of the letter, then we sort of fine tuned it. And
Okay.
the other thing we could do is send a draft letter out to everyone and invite your comments. Does that create a public meeting issue if we do that?
I believe as long as there's not a quorum working on it, that's fine. We were working that shared document and there were 3 of you. So Kate, what we could do is set up the document, and what I would ask you all is if you would prefer us to just drop some points in there and then you can fill it
I
in.
would, lesson learned for me is, there's both verbiage and approach strategy that you and your team within the division have. And if we start there, we get to where we need to be a lot faster and save you a lot of work in the end.
And you too. I
Hey,
feel
it's
bad.
all
I
good.
ended up editing a lot of it.
It's all good.
But
Just can't
what you wrote was
feedback.
really good.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying. And so we can create the draft and put in some talking points. And then if you all want to go in and contribute, and then Alice will route it via DocuSign for Ted and Glenn to sign.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, I'm interested. I've been a little bit. I haven't been as involved, the baby world over there, but I'm sort of ready to dive back in now.
Cut
So
it loose.
yeah. This is my first night back since last July, I think.
I say bring the baby. That'll be we have a vacant seat actually. If we could,
Nah,
Yeah. He's good at meetings. He's been to some conferences already. So, but yes, I'd be interested in.
Well, I appreciate it. And I would say if you want to sign up for public comment, I can make sure that I follow up and give you direction how to do that. I know you can, I don't know if you have to request it in advance or just show up, and you can give it online as well. But I will get
yeah, but
the,
that's got like a timeline. It has to be submitted
3
by, yeah. Oh, I was thinking of the written stuff has to be to them by a certain
The written stuff I'll submit with our packet. And so it goes up with the presentation, and that is by June 21st. If you want to give a verbal comment, I will make sure that I get I'm looking at my calendar, I apologize. I will make sure that I get clear direction for how you can do that, but I think you can just show up.
I think you can just show up and do a public comment. It's not like city council.
Yeah, I think you can just show up, and that can be online or in person. But I will be sure to get clarification on that and what time we're starting as well. Because sometimes if we're the second, I don't want to waste people's time. I always try to be up first, but they usually tuck us in with Board of Health. And so if we're lucky, we start at 9:15 or 9:30, but if there's something before us, it could be any time, depending on what the topic is.
Yeah, I think if we're going to do public testimony, we should coordinate it in a way that we don't duplicate. We could take sections of the letter and each be responsible for discussing certain portions of it. Would that be something you would be attending to?
Yeah,
Okay.
interested. Mhm.
Maybe would you be interested as well in attending?
I would.
Okay, we could, we're approaching a quorum here at some
That's
point, so
okay though, because
yeah.
I think that's okay. I will also check on
you might
that.
want to check on that too and make sure we're not doing something that violates OPMA in that way. Yeah, the more the merrier, and I think the more impact it will have on the council to be hearing from all of us.
Yeah.
Or most of us. So.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the one thing that would help, I don't know if it would be possible, would be to maybe have a peek at the rate information before we do our testimony. So we kind of know
What it is. I might be
what
able.
what we're getting ourselves into. But, if it works, if not, then that's okay too.
Yeah, maybe in the work group, because I think because this is a recorded public meeting, I think at this time I would hesitate to share it in this forum, but in a smaller work group meeting, I think I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, it's just too early, I think, to share publicly.
Yeah, it could adjust a lot even 2 weeks.
Yep.
Do you have a question?
I was just gonna ask, do you encourage us to reach out to our communities, people that we know, to do public comment that day?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Anyone is invited. My only request would be that it is focused on the topic.
Well, I agree.
Yeah, because I think if you follow the council, there's been a lot of, that's all I'll say. If you follow it, there's been a lot of unfocused public comment. So as long as it's constructive and consistent with our vision, then 100%.
I actually watched the video of your, was it May 22nd?
Oh, thank you.
Zoa shared it with me. So is that, I can't remember. Zora shared it with me, and it was very enlightening. I'm gonna go back and watch it again and
All the public comments.
yeah, and I have actually shared it with a couple of people to watch it.
Unfortunately, there's been some really challenging public comments for the last, since I've been here, every meeting, same people, very challenging, very derogatory, hate speech.
I'm not really surprised because unfortunately the city council has to deal with that too. There are certain people that continually come and disrupt the meetings, and it's the same rhetoric all the time.
Yeah, it's really challenging. So I always welcome constructive, factual, supportive comments, which I'm really excited to have a commission that is has so much. I feel very supported by you all, and it's only our third meeting now in the commission, your second meeting. But it feels like we're good off to this stuff.
Great.
Well, hopefully you'll have better council representation because it's my understanding they're not voting on the comprehensive plan until 2025. So we have time to switch the council before that vote goes forward.
I think as far as we covered Vancouver Lake, and so at this time, I think I'll pass it back to you, Chair.
Usually we ask at the end of every meeting if there's comments from individual commission members. So before we wind up, is there any subjects that any individual members of the commission want to discuss before we adjourn?
Nobody's working on anything exciting?
Okay, seeing none, unless there's any further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Second. Motion to adjourn is approved and the meeting is concluded at 8:11.
Sweet.
I feel like it's a record. Thank you for those of you online, and thank you to our members of the public for joining us today. Yeah, great.
Be safe,
See you.
everyone.
All right, take care.
We'll see you, Rudy. Get these.
I will see you tomorrow. And Tracy.
Thanks for joining.
Is tomorrow your first meeting officially?
Dropped off some